Hey, welcome to Flooring 101, where we discuss what it's like to be in the retail flooring business, how to build, how to grow, and how to manage a retail flooring store. I'm Jason Jabbar, and I've spent the last 25 years in the retail flooring business, the last 10 as CEO of Jabbar's Carpet Outlet. We're one of the largest independently owned retail flooring businesses in the country. And if you're in the retail flooring business and you're experiencing issues or you're thinking about getting into the flooring retail business, this podcast is for you. So stay tuned. So today we'll kind of be discussing an overview of Flooring 101, where if you stick with us, you're going to learn how to run, start, and scale a profitable flooring business through proven systems of sales, operations, and marketing. So today we're specifically talking about the retail flooring reality check. This is what you're getting yourself into. So you thought getting into the retail flooring business was a good idea? Well, we'll just see about that. So the truth about retail, why most stores struggle, the installer versus the retail owner mindset, and then the 5 pillars of a profitable store. So this video should give you clarity, it should give you a startup blueprint, and it should give you a few mistakes that you should avoid. And at the end of the video, please let us know what you liked and what questions you might have. Remember, you can follow us on all of our different locations. You can follow us on Substack and Reddit, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram under the Flooring 101 banner. And you can find our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, in any of your other favorite podcast locations. Plus, if you want to get some one-on-one time and really dive into bettering your business, you can go to jasonjabbar.com. That's JasonJabara.com. And we can book a one-on-one call and kind of really get into the specifics of your business and how we might be able to help you get your business back on track. So let's start off by talking about really the truth of about retail flooring. And the fact is that it's a systems business and not a products business. You know, we all sell the same type of products. Whether you go into a Home Depot or Lowe's, whether you're in a Carpet One or you're an independent retailer, the products are all the same. The carpet, the wood, the laminate, the vinyl plank, they may have different names and you'll have a variety of price points, but essentially we're all selling the same thing. What we're all doing differently, though, is the systems that we have in place in order to sell those products. And so the better systems that you have in place, the better you're going to be able to be a productive business. And if you don't have those systems in place, even from the very beginning, if you're thinking about getting into into the retail flooring business and you're like, hey, I got a guy I can buy some carpet from, or I've got an account with this distributor because I was an installer and I can buy some vinyl plank and I can turn it pretty easy. If you don't have the systems in place, you're going to find it a real rough road to hoe. So you really have to have those systems in place, and that's the truth about the retail flooring business. Secondly, you know, the margins that you set are going to be won or lost in process. You know, if you start cutting margins and thinning your margins down or giving that buddy discount, that's going to be a real issue moving forward. So, you know, the truth is that your margins are where you're going to make your money, and sticking with those margins is very important in order to be successful. Also, the bigger your business gets, the more complex it gets, the faster it's going to move, and that speed and that complexity increases as you grow. And if you don't have structure in place, you're going to have some problems and issues with your business moving forward. So, you know, remember, it's a systems business. Your revenue can't hide your unprofitability. The margins are won or lost in process, and complexity increases faster without structure. And so that structure is super important. The next thing we want to talk a little bit about is why most stores struggle. And it's not because you don't have products, and it's not because you don't have people. Really, the reasons that a business will struggle, and a retail business specifically will struggle, is a few points. The first one is that you don't have a defined sales process. You know, whether you have one salesperson or 6 salespeople, you need to have a process in place for those salespeople. You need to get it written down. You need it on paper. You need it able to print it out for them to see it. It needs to be the same sales process for all of your salespeople, for your RSAs that you're training in your showroom. If you're not sure how to create a standard operating procedure or a sales process, you can Google it pretty easy. You can go to ChatGPT and pretty easy and get a defined sales process for a salesperson and move it in a way so that it fits your retail store. But you have to have a defined sales process or you're going to struggle as a dealer. Next, weak margin discipline. If you're giving that buddy discount, if you're always cutting your margins down so that you can meet a competitor's bid, having weak margins and lowering those margins is surely going to be a reason that your business is going to be struggling. And if you're in the retail business already and you're struggling to keep up, if the cash flow isn't there, if the money's not there, the first thing you should probably look at is your margins. Keeping it above that 40% margins, so you can take into account everything else. You're going to pay probably half of it back to the manufacturer or the distributor for the product. That's going to leave you 50% or maybe a little bit more. But after that, once you start taking out labor, cost of goods, what you're paying your salespeople, turning on the lights, the square footage of your building, you're really only playing with 4 or 5% at that bottom line. And that's where your gravy is. And the more that you cut those margins, the more difficult it is to be able to keep your head above water. So you want to make sure that you have a real strong margin discipline and aren't weak in your margins and stick to your guns. Another reason that a lot of stores struggle is poor vendor terms. So whether you're working with larger manufacturers like Shaw or Mohawk or Engineered Floors, if you're working with distributors like W.C. Tingle or Harrigan's, or you're working with one of the smaller mills, or for that matter, even an independent rep, you need to make sure that you have your terms set when you're setting up your accounts. If you're just starting out, you may be something like 30-day net. If you have a little bit more experience or you bought an established business, you may be able to get those to 60 to 90 days. I would always try and take advantage of specials that the manufacturers are having. If you can get 3 months or 6 months terms, those are going to be a lot better for you. But if you have poor vendor terms, if everything is net 30 and you've got to turn that over, as soon as you sell it, they ship it, and you've got to get it installed, but the customer wants to wait a couple weeks and they haven't paid for everything up front, that's going to crunch down on your cash flow. And so having better vendor terms is going to be one of the ways that you can help to not struggle as a store. Fourth would be inconsistent marketing. There's 100 different ways to market your business. And I would strongly suggest that you sit down in that 90-day plan, which will be in a future podcast, but go through it and set your marketing budget for the entire year. Set your calendar for the entire year. What are you going to do each month? What are you going to do every quarter? Whether it's TV or SEO or PPC, whether you're just running everything through your website, if you're going to try and do everything through social media and organics, through short videos, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikToks, whatever your marketing budget is, you need to make sure that it's consistent. If you're working with a manufacturer and you're aligned with their marketing schedule, if you are part of a buying group, your Flooring America or something like that, and they've got a marketing schedule that they're putting out there, stick with it. These are giant companies who have done a lot of research. They put together the plans. They have the assets that you can piggyback on. Use that information. Keep your marketing consistent, and that'll keep you from struggling as a business. And then lastly, the last reason why most stores struggle, and probably the most important, is owner overload. If you're just starting out, maybe you've just taken over a business or you were an installer who decided to get into retail flooring, you're probably doing everything. And that may be the way that you have to start off, but it's not the way that you should continue to build your business moving forward. If you overload yourself as an owner, if you're doing all the measuring, all the estimating, you're doing the sales, you're doing the purchasing, you're doing the receiving, you're doing the loading, and you're installing on the side, you're going to burn yourself out and you're not going to last very long and your store is going to struggle. You need to set a clear expectation for yourself as the owner, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the next segment when we talk about the installer versus retailer mindset. But the biggest reason a store struggles is because the owner of the business, the president, the CEO, who's ever in charge, is probably doing too much. If you're at a point where there's too much work and you can't hire somebody, you probably have to take a step back. You'll know when the right time is to hire somebody. But until you do that, you just really need to make sure that you don't overload yourself. Let your employees do what they're good at. Let your salespeople sell. Let your operations people operate. And you have to concentrate on owning the business and steering the ship. So that's just a few things, when we talk about why stores struggle, that there isn't a defined sales process, weak margins, poor vendor terms, inconsistent marketing, and then owner overload. If you can take care of those things, you're going to struggle less as a business and you're going to be more successful. Another reality check on your retail store is the idea of an installer versus a retail owner mindset. Skill versus strategy, craftsmanship versus cash flow, working in versus working on the business, thinking like a retailer. If you come from that installation background, or you worked for a commercial company, or you were on an installation crew, or you were an estimator, you've decided to get into the retail business, you've got to start thinking more like a retailer and less like an installer. This is an owner mindset that you have to keep forward and in the front of your mind, and making sure that you're working on the business and not working in the business. You're the king of the castle, the queen of the castle. You're the one that's moving everybody forward, and you've got to think like a retailer. And you've got to let the other people who are in your business do their jobs and let them do it to the best of your ability. If you've hired installers, let them install. They don't need you there the entire time watching them. You've hired them for a reason. Let them, ply their craft and do a good job. But make sure that you keep that retail owner mindset over the installer mindset, and that's going to help you a lot when you're trying to be a successful retailer in the flooring business. So that kind of brings us back to the main part, which is kind of our 5 pillars of a profitable store. That's financial control, a sales system, operational system, a marketing engine, and then the leadership and scale of the business. And if you can connect on these 5 pillars and you can be strong in your success of achieving these 5 pillars, things like installer versus retail owner mindset, and why businesses struggle, and the truth about the retail flooring, all of those things that we talked about that could be issues that you want to keep in mind when you are developing your business and growing your business and getting your business off the ground. If you can keep these 5 pillars in mind and you can be successful in the implementation of these 5 pillars, you're going to be successful as a retail business owner, and you're going to be successful as a retail flooring business owner. So, the first one is the financial control. You need to make sure that your finances are in order. You need to make sure that you have a budget. Moving forward, it'll be part of the 90-day plan that we'll talk about in future podcasts. But having that financial control, making sure you have enough money to start your business, making sure your vendor terms are all out there and extended as far as they can, making sure that you're making smart purchases in the materials and in the displays in your showroom, and getting terms on those displays. Having your finances in order. It's a great idea to start a retail flooring business. It's a great idea to buy a retail flooring business, but you've got to have some cash. You're not just going to open the doors and people are just going to start opening their wallets. It's going to take time to get your feet under you, and unless you've got your finances in order and have a good budget in plan and in place, creating that business pro forma and knowing where you're going to be at, if you can get that under control before you open those doors, you're going to have a profitable flooring store. Second one is a sales system. We talked about making sure that you have a sales system in place for all of your sales staff, and not only just a sales process, but a full system. Do you have a sales manager? Do you have a couple of RSAs, of salespeople? Maybe you're just starting with one and that person reports to you, but let them do their job. Make sure that they have their system in place, that they have their process, how they're supposed to take orders, how they're supposed to sift those orders through, how they're supposed to complete the installation process when they hand it over to operations. If you've got that sales system in place, that's another pillar that's going to uphold your retail business, and it's going to make you successful, and it's going to have you're going to have a profitable flooring retail store. The third pillar is the operational system. So for me, operations is going to be your warehouse staff, it's going to be your installation staff, it's going to be your customer service. Kind of think of the sales system and the sales staff as your front of house, and your operational system is going to be your back of the house. And for most businesses, those are two separate things. Just when you're starting off, maybe it's combined together, but hopefully you're going to get to a point that you can separate that off and let those people have what they're doing, so that the sales is going to take the front half, and they're going to do the sales process, greet the customers, check out samples, get it measured, get it estimated, sell the job. But the operations system is going to be your lasting impact point when you finish that installation, so that you get good positive customer reviews, so you get repeat referral business, so you get word of mouth business. That operational system, your warehouse, your installers, your customer service, that's your back of house, and that's going to be your lasting final impression that you have on a customer. And it's just as important. We can sell stuff all day, but we're not going to make any money if there's mistakes in the warehouse, if they've cut the wrong carpets, if they've loaded the wrong tile, if the installer didn't show up. All of those things cost money, and you need to make sure that you have your operation side of the business in control in order to be a profitable store. And then you've got your marketing engine. Again, we talked about making sure that you have a marketing schedule, but that engine needs to keep pushing forward. You need to have an idea of where you want your marketing to go and how you want it to be presented to the customer. Whether you're doing everything off repeat referral, maybe your specialty is interior designers, maybe your specialty is to the trade, maybe you're a high-end store, maybe you're a volume business or a stocking dealer, but all of your marketing needs to be wrapped in around that. I have very good relationships with the large manufacturers and my distributors. But the general person, John Q. Public and Joan Q. Public, doesn't know who Shaw or Mohawk is. They don't know who Harrigan's is. They don't know who BPI is. The flooring industry is not like the car industry or the appliance industry. What they're going to know is they're going to know Jabara's Carpet Outlet. They're going to know America Floor Source. They're going to know, whatever the name of your store is. That's what you want front and center in your marketing, with your tagline, your slogan, your values, your motto. That's what you want to push, whether it's quick service, fantastic savings, great selection, whatever you're building your business around. That marketing engine's sole purpose should be to be driving that point home again and again and again. It should be in your socials, it should be on your website, it should be in your SEO, your PPC. Everything should be geared towards that marketing engine to garner that business, to create that repeat referral business, to gain the new business. That's how you get your name out, is going to be your consistent marketing and expending all of your energy into making sure that engine is running in the same direction. And then the last pillar is leadership and scale. Whether you're new to the flooring industry, if you're new to the flooring retail business, if you've just bought a store and you've taken one over, just thought, hey, I think it'd be fun to get into the retail flooring business. Your leadership and how you run your company is what's going to allow your marketing department, your operations, your sales, those other 4 pillars of successful businesses to grow and prosper. And if your leadership as the owner or the CEO of the business is front and center, if you're guiding your team, if you're having your weekly meetings, if you're setting a budget, if you're setting monthly sales goals, if you're giving them incentives, if you're paying them correctly, if you're paying them on time, your leadership is what's going to allow those other pillars to stay in place. And if you can get those 5 pillars in place and you can get them to a point where they're rock solid, you're going to have a profitable store. You don't have to be the biggest. You just have to run the smoothest. And that goes back to when we talked about having the systems in place. If you have financial systems in place, checks and balances, a sales system, an operational system, you've got a marketing engine in place and a marketing roadmap that you're going to follow for the quarter, for the year, and then you're leading that way, they're going to follow, and that's going to make you successful. So, hopefully this has given you a little bit of clarity as to where we're kind of going with this podcast and where we're going with Flooring 101, especially if you're new to the flooring industry, if you're been in the flooring industry for a while, but you just took over a store. We're going to get a lot more in-depth into this. This is just kind of an introduction to say hello. So hopefully we've given you a little bit about the blueprint, maybe some mistakes that you can try and avoid. And like I said, in a couple later issues, we're going to give you a full roadmap, a 90-day roadmap on where you need to go. So hopefully you've gotten that clarity, the startup blueprint, some mistakes to avoid. At the end of this video, let us know. Did you like it? What did you like? What didn't you like? Questions you might have. Remember, you can follow us on all of your favorite podcast locations, as well as on Substack, Reddit, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Everything's under the Flooring 101 banner. We're continually putting content out there, posing questions on Facebook, putting chapter analysis on Substack. There'll be an ebook that's going to be out later. We're active on LinkedIn. So, if you ever have any questions or concerns, or you just want to say hi, Jason Jabara is not that common of a name, so you can probably find it pretty easy, or just type in Flooring 101 on any of your favorite locations and socials that you use. We're always going to be there. Plus, like I said, if you want to get some of that one-on-one time and maybe this isn't answering exactly what you're wanting to know from the very beginning, if you really want us to dive into your business specifically and figuring out a way that we can really create some difference in your specific business, you can always go to jasonjabara.com and book a call. So, next time we're going to discuss how to choose the right retail model for your store. So, if you're just starting out, hopefully we've gotten some of these ideas out of the way of what you're getting yourself into, what the truth is about the retail flooring store and why stores struggle. Getting rid of that installer versus retailer mindset, and really what, if you can get those 5 pillars of what makes a profitable store down, if you can be prepared and have that on paper, have it in your systems, have it ready to go, have it in place, you've got a chance to be a lot more profitable store. So, if you've got all that stuff in place, it's probably ready to move to the next chapter, which is trying to figure out what the right retail model is for your store. And if you're already in an existing store, is it the right model? Should you be making a change? So we'll talk about that next time. For Flooring 101, I'm Jason Jabara, and we'll see you next time.